On today's show, we're going to continue the theme of trades, and we're locking in on one name. And this was a name that we did not mention on our trade show that we had a couple of nights ago, and that's Buddy Hield. It sounds like the Pacers and Buddy Hield are looking to make a trade or looking at options. There will probably be teams involved that want to have a look at Buddy Hield, but should the Bucks be one of them? What would a package look like? And would you be willing to invest in Buddy Hield, who is going to be a free agent this offseason, next offseason? Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Bucks. My name's Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday, and also find my work over at ESPN. And alongside me, back again, Camille Davis, who you can find on the Technical Foul podcast. You can also find on Carry the G, which is a Packers show that is on absolute fire right now. The Packers looking to bounce back this weekend at home, finally. But of course, most importantly, you can listen to Camille on Locked On Bucks. We thank you all for making Locked On Bucks your first watch or first listen of every weekday. We're ramping up to the regular season, and we need your support. So make sure you subscribe, drop a like, a comment, rate, review, and do all those things. It's free to do, and it helps us continue to grow the show. So today's episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA or enter the promo code LockedOnNBA for a free water bottle with any purchase. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you that. Now, I've mentioned this a couple times, but maybe there's new people plugging into the show, Camille. You've got a wonderful new microphone, and your audio is just sounding superb right now. I still have my broken microphone in travel damage, so I'm working on getting some new equipment. So the audio not quite up to scratch, but we appreciate the support either way. Let's dive right into it. So a couple of days ago, an Athletic report, Shams Charania, saying that the Pacers and Buddy Hield are going to at least explore options now. Buddy Hield, a free agent next offseason. They haven't been able to come to terms on an extension. So he might be on the way out of Indiana. What's your first reaction when you see this? And is it immediately, let's get in on the action?
You know me at this point, Kane. My first reaction is always, at what cost? Like, what does it take in order to get Buddy Hield here in Milwaukee? But Buddy, I mean, that's a name that's been floating around for a while. We've heard the trade rumors about him. He was going to go to LA at one point, ended up in Indiana. And my first thought when I heard it was, I mean, if the Bucks were to strike a deal with them, we do have a track record of working with the Pacers and finding a deal, from the Brogdon trade to, Jordan Nwora more recently with George Hill. So we know those phones between the Pacers and the Bucks are working, and Buddy Hield's a shooter. When you talk about that 2 spot on the Bucks starting lineup, if you're assuming that you have your Jrue Holiday at the point, you have Chris at the 3, you have Giannis at the 4, and Brook at the 5. We've always penciled in Grayson there on this particular roster because it's kind of like, one, there's no other better option for that starting shooting guard spot. But when you look at what Grayson brings and then what someone like Buddy Hield could bring, it's a lot of the same. Buddy Hield is going to be a 40%, plus 3-point shooter. He can get his own shot. He's exceptional at getting his own shot. Matter of fact, I'd say that's pretty much like the breadth of his game for the most part offensively. He's looking to score. He's going to get his bucket. Not so much a playmaker, but on this particular roster, slotting him in as a starting shooting guard, I don't think he actually needs to be that to be successful in the system. So I like the idea of Buddy. It's just, again, what will it take for us to get him?
So just a few notes on Buddy Hield, because I think you've summed it up perfectly there in terms of what you're getting when you, if you bring in a Buddy Hield to this lineup. Again, it's fine if he's just a scorer, because that's probably what the Bucks need anyway. It's been certainly a skill set that I've been discussing on this show over the last few weeks. And I think overall, there's no question he is an upgrade over Grayson Allen at the moment. We'll get to the trade package in just a little bit. So Buddy Hield, it's interesting. He's 31 in December, and he is definitely, for me, one of those guys. He came into the league a little bit later, so he's older than you think. Well, for me, anyway. One other thing that I'm curious about how you feel, and he is an elite shooter, and this was a stat that I took from that Athletic article, but last 5 seasons, nobody in the NBA has made more threes than Buddy Hield. So he can flat out shoot it, over 40% from 3 across his career, 7.7 attempts. So he's a high-volume shooter, so you can trust the shooting. Do you care about the fact that he's played 548 regular season games and 0 playoff games. Does that matter to you at all? Keeping in mind, obviously, he's been Sacramento, Indiana, Pelicans for a little bit there.
Yeah, and he was not on this version of the Sacramento Kings that is exciting and lighting the beam and, getting some big dubs here. So does it bother me? Not necessarily, because 500 plus regular season games in itself is quite a bit of basketball at the NBA level to have played. And we all know that only one man can only do so much, on the floor. Like, it's not all on him that he hasn't made the playoffs yet in his career. He just needs the opportunity to get there. But the other side of that is, when he gets to the playoffs, will he be able to perform when the lights are a bit brighter, when the defense are keyed in on him a little bit more? But then you can have the flip side of that as well, and saying, like, well, if you put him next to a Giannis and a Chris and a Drew, that's a lot of playoff experience right there. That's really still the core of our championship team there, along with Brooke. I know we have Bobby and Pat off the bench, but not sure if either one of them would be there if we make this trade for Buddy. So you have to lean on those four and their experience to get through that. And I don't see that as being as big of a problem, because, one thing you hear about a lot of shooters who come to the Bucks is that, one, they say, I've never had this much space to shoot.
Yes.
The gravity of Giannis. And if you think about a 3-point shooter like a Buddy Hield, what he might be able to do if he has more space in front of him, it's kind of exciting, especially when you think about the Bucks playoff history over the last few years. And what always seems to go for the Bucks is not the defense, it's that offense. It's finding somebody who can get a consistent bucket throughout the series and crunch time, so on and so forth. And we've seen the offense dry up even during the championship run. A lot of that was defense predicated, where they leaned on their defense and was able to get enough stops to make up for their lack of bucket getting. So no, I wouldn't be worried with bringing him in, although he doesn't have too much playoff experience. I think that he'd have to just lean on those other four starters and play his role.
I think you're right. It doesn't scare me off too much at this point in time. You'll find out, and you might look back and go, well, gee, that didn't work out. But if he came here, you would expect it would be his first postseason run there. 64% of his shots came from three. So he's going to let it fly. That was last season. 64% of his field goal attempts were three. So he's going to let it fly. And I do think, when I say he's an upgrade over Grayson Allen, he's scored at a high volume. He's taken more shots, all those types of things. But I do think that maybe there's a different level of defensive attention with Buddy Hield. Like, he's legit. He might be, well, he's probably a top 3, 4, 5 shooter in the NBA. So, it is a different level there. Let me ask you something that I just thought of now, and it's, as usual, when I throw questions at you, it's not necessarily fair that I'm asking you this on the fly, but we discussed a bunch of names on the podcast a couple of nights ago, and Buddy Hield wasn't one of those on the spreadsheet that Frank had. So let me just ask you, if you say, okay, Buddy Hield, and we'll get to the trade package next, Buddy Hield, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Colin Sexton, or Emmanuel Quickly, I don't know if you can rank those right now or which name stands out to you. Is there anyone out of those four? Let's just say, in theory, the Bucks could trade for any of those guys.
Ooh, well, the thing with trading for Buddy Hield to consider as well is that, as you mentioned, this is the last year of his deal. So you'd have to come up on some more money and, get that new contract out there. I'd have to look at the numbers for, you said Quigley, Bogdan,
Bogdanovic,
and who was the other one? Sexton. So I have to look at I don't remember the contract situation on top of my head, but that piece with Buddy is really interesting, especially seeing where the Bucks are currently when it comes to their salary cap, seeing how they have seemed to plan out all of these contracts throughout, Giannis's time here, and trying to align that. But if I'm taking out contracts, taking out all the other stuff, and just thinking of player fit, I do still think I would go with Buddy over those other three. Again, listen, 40 plus 3-point percent shooter, 6'4", which, in this NBA, 6'4", you can, combo. He's not a great playmaker, though, that you might get from some of those other guys, but that shooting ability and the way he's able to get his shot, he doesn't just catch and shoot. Like, he can create, from beyond that arc in a few different ways. And that is so appealing to me.
Yeah, over 40% on pull-ups last year as well, and shot attempts from three that were 2+ dribbles. So, yeah, he can really shoot it. I don't know. It's interesting. We had the Locked On crossover podcast with the Knicks yesterday. A lot of Giannis chat, but we did get to Emmanuel quickly at the back end of that podcast. If you haven't listened to it, go check it out, because some of the stuff that Gavin Scholl from Locked On Knicks said about Emmanuel quickly had me highly excited. He would be a guy that will need to be paid in the future as well. And then a benefit for Bogdanovic is that the contract's locked in for the next few years, and the price is actually coming down to around 16 mil in a couple of years' time. So I'd probably still lean to Bogdanovic in terms of winning this season, but maybe quickly, clearly the high upside guy. But let us know what you think in the YouTube comments, those four guys. Maybe I'll put that in the YouTube comments there as well. Let's get to a trade package, though, because this is where things get interesting for a guy that is a free agent next offseason. So we'll talk about that next after we talk about Bird Dogs. And you know how I feel about this. This is the Bird Dogs stretch khaki shorts that are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look, Camille. And that's what we're all after, let's be honest. Even if you're not working out, you wear these Bird Dog shorts. It makes it look like you are. So Bird Dog shorts do the same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better. They fit better than your regular shorts that are made of stiff, restricting cotton, and they're very comfortable. And you can wear them on any occasion. So whether you're going out to play golf, my dad wants to play golf on the weekend. I haven't played for a long time. I usually embarrass myself. I may as well at least be looking good. So I'll chuck the Bird Dogs on. A date, going out for dinner. You can swim in them if you really want to. And as we mentioned, work out as well. So they're versatile. That's the key thing when it comes to the Bird Dog shorts. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA or enter the promo code LockedOnNBA at checkout for a free Bird Dogs water bottle with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you that. Let's talk cost for Buddy Hield in a trade package. So he actually had a substantial contract last time around. So a 4-year, $94 million deal. And he's a good player. But as we mentioned, he is 31. He'll be 32 next year, very early when that next contract kicks in. So I am at least curious about what Buddy Hield believes his value is, or what type of money he's looking at, because 4 years, $94 million deal. He's owed 19.2 this year. And to me, that feels about right for a player like Buddy Hield. That I don't think you want to go too much higher than that.
No, and when you have a skill set like he does in this modern NBA where three-point shooting is so highly valued, like, yeah, he's going to be around a $20 million a year type of guy, I think, at bare minimum there. So again, when you think about the numbers here, you have Chris on the books, you have Brooke on the books, you have Giannis on the books, and you're looking to extend Giannis hopefully next summer, the same time period that you would be looking to renegotiate the contract with Buddy Hield and get him back on the books with this new contract. So like, it's going to be a hefty tax bill. Like, it's not my money coming out my pocket. So
that's right.
I don't necessarily care too much about that. But the question you have to ask is it realistic for ownership to want to, foot out a luxury bill this high, especially when you think about how the new CBA has those new incentives for teams to not spend as much money with what comes if you're over that cap number, especially over that second line. So it's something to consider. But I think that he is worth that money. So then the question comes, can the Bucks make that work financially for their team?
So if we're talking about just bringing in Buddy Hield to Milwaukee, again, you look at that $19.2 million. So we've been here before across this summer, but we keep coming back to, if you want to match those salaries, it's probably going to have to be, just to get to the money amount, it's going to be two of the three guys that we've discussed. So Grayson Allen would be in the trade if that would be part of it, you would have to assume. And then you would have, Pat Connaughton and Bobby Portis. So now I would assume positionally, maybe it's Bobby, but I don't know. Again, something I've thought about, and we've discussed Bobby Portis, and I know a lot of Bucks fans are like, well, you can't get rid of him. I think it does leave you a little bit short in the big man department. Maybe you have an open roster spot after that. We'll see. But the question would be, what do the Pacers think the value is for Buddy Hield? And then are they getting other offers where the Bucks would have to throw something else on top? And you say, well, what do you have to throw on top? Well, you've got the first round draft pick, but again, you're talking about a free agent next summer. I don't think Beauchamp is a part of that. I don't think Bucks fans would be too excited about that idea. So if you're just talking straight up for Buddy Hield, let's just say that it's Grayson Allen, Bobby Portis, and a first-round pick. It feels a little bit too much. How does that sit with you immediately?
Yeah, that feels a little pricey to me. Throwing in that first rounder on top of that as well, given the fact that it's an expiring contract. Now, if it was a contract situation like Bogdan, where it's like we have him for a few years here to declining contract, then maybe, I'm more receptive to throwing in a first round draft pick at that as well. But that feels a little rich, maybe second, if we can find one of those to muster and throw into that type of deal. And also on top of that, you got to think about the roster construction now. So if it is Bobby and Grayson that goes out, like you mentioned, that really thins out your front court rotation, because going into the season, we're assuming your front court rotation is going to be Brooke, Giannis, Bobby, and I'm assuming Jay Crowder again. And that's an assumption based purely on speculation of him re-signing here in Milwaukee after complaining last season about not being clear about his role was and not playing. So you would think that he re-signed here because he knew he was going to get an opportunity to play a little bit more than he did last year, or at least have a more consistent role. Then you also have Robin Lopez off the bench, but I always looked at the signing of Robin as just insurance, like not somebody who's really going to be a rotational player when the minutes count. So if you're losing Bobby, now you're looking at a rotation of just Brooke, Giannis, Jay, and then maybe it is more Robin Lopez on the court. And I don't know if that's necessarily a positive, especially because Bobby has that flex, 4 or 5 ability, and Robin, I see him purely as a 5 and gets thin there. But you're also creating an extra roster spot. So is there another big out there on the market that you're going to want to take a shot on? But if you're doing that, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a guy who you would trust in the playoffs, getting big minutes if they're still on the market at this moment, sitting at home waiting for someone to call them. Doesn't seem like they're going to be able to make up the production that we got with the Bobby Portis. So you have to balance that a little bit and say, like, is it worth upgrading, at the guard position to have another hit on our front court depth?
Dwight Howard working out with the Golden State Warriors. Did I dream that, or is that actually a fact?
You said Dwight Howard?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's going.
We'll see. We'll see what happens there. But the big conversation is interesting in any Bobby Portis situation. And again, a fan favorite, typically when we even mention that, we get a few comments that are saying, don't talk about trading Bobby, which I totally understand. So I probably am with you based on the contract status that the first round pick feels a little bit rich. But the Bucks are in a position where they need to upgrade this roster. It is a position of need. Buddy Hield would come in and be an immediate starter on this team. So at the same time, you have to ask yourself the question, well, you're bringing in a starting quality guard at a position you need. Maybe that's the price you have to pay. But let us know in the YouTube comments. If that was the deal, let's say Grayson Allen, Bobby Portis, first round pick for Buddy Hield. How do you feel about it? And then I've got a variation on this trade. Maybe juice things up a little bit from the Bucks side, and I'm doing this in honor of our great mate, Frank Madden. So I want to get to that next after we talk about DoorDash, the sponsor of today's podcast. And look, we all know what DoorDash does, and you've trusted DoorDash to deliver your favorite restaurant favorites, and now you can get grocery delivery that actually delivers as well. With thousands of grocery stores to choose from, you'll find the best in your neighborhood and boost your local economy with each and every order. If you want even more value, you can save on all your grocery and restaurant favorites with a $0 delivery fee on all eligible orders with a Dash Pass membership. For our listeners, though, get 50% off your first DoorDash order up to $20 when you use the code LOCKEDONNBA at checkout. Limited time offer. Terms apply. That's 50% off up to $20. No minimum subtotal there, and $0 delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter the code LOCKEDONNBA. Don't forget, that's code LOCKEDONNBA for 50% off your first order with DoorDash. So if we're talking trade packages and you're sitting there and you're saying to yourself, first round pick, give up 2 important rotation players, guys that are going to play in the postseason. You get one guy back, but you've given up your one asset for really a guy that potentially might not be at your team beyond this season. Mm-hmm. And I can understand if you're saying that's a little bit too much. So what if the Bucks are saying to Indiana, well, we're giving you a 2029 first round pick. For all we know, this could be legitimately a top 5 pick. We don't know what's going on. And that's how you have to sell it if you're the Milwaukee Bucks. Hey, this pick is extremely valuable. I don't know how those negotiations go, but if you're Milwaukee, that's what you're saying right now. So a guy that Frank was pretty high on the other day on the trade podcast that we did in terms of young players with upside that can potentially grow with the franchise. And the Bucks are in that position where they're looking for young guys. Mm-hmm. So if you're giving up Grayson Allen, Bobby Portis, mix and match, is Pat Connaughton in that mix? Who knows? I think Pat is very valuable to me, but maybe that's what you need to make a deal get done here. You throw in a first-round pick. Maybe you've got some seconds floating around that you can get. I think there's a Portland second in there somewhere the Bucks have, but maybe there's some second-round picks. Maybe a young player like I don't know if there's any interest in any of the rookies the Bucks have. Probably not Andre Jackson Jr. I think there's some genuine excitement about him. And then you get back Andrew Nembhard from the Pacers, who Frank is very excited about. I assume the Pacers are pretty high on him as well. He played 75 games last year as a rookie and performed pretty well. I think that can tip the scales. And I say, okay, that's worth it now. You're getting a young upside guy. You're giving up a really valuable asset. The Pacers aren't going to pay Buddy Hield, so they get something for that moving forward, a pick that they might think is pretty valuable. It's a long way off, so maybe they get better offers, but does that juice things up for you a little bit?
Absolutely. I mean, we've been talking about how this team is old and how they need an infusion of youth. And if you can listen, as a rookie watching him play last year, it was just kind of like you're just watching them hard and you're like, okay, like the kid, he's a pretty good guard. Like he's doing his thing. Like he's coming off the bench too. And you're like, okay, like he might be able to start somewhere. And it reminds me, and I want to be very clear. I am not saying that he has the same projection as this player, but it reminds me of like flashes that you got watching like SGA when he was younger and on the Clippers still. And you're just kind of like, man, like the Clippers got a good one there. Like, I don't know why they would give him up. Don't know why they would do that. And then, a trade comes up and they actually pull the trigger on it because they're like, we can't pass this opportunity that we have here to go for the star power. But yeah, that's a big sweetener. And that one makes it a little bit easier to say, yes, have this first round draft pick, take Bobby, take Grayson. And again, I say that as somebody who absolutely loves Bobby Portis. And I would still have concerns about the front court depth there, but to be able to try and do what the Warriors were doing with their 2 timelines, which didn't necessarily pan out for them after they paid Jordan Poole. Yeah. But being able to have some young guys on the bench who can continue to grow with Giannis, or even behind him. So like when Giannis is gone, there is still a group of talent here left in Milwaukee with these young guys. We all have high hopes for Marjan this season. We saw our other rookies during summer camp, summer league, and just trying to be like, okay, there's some flashes here. Let's see what you can do. And again, the other question that comes down to it, which we still don't have a solid answer for, is how they fit into the scheme, right? With this new head coach here. So yeah, if you throw, yes, I'm here for it. Yeah.
I think if I look at it, and this is generally the way these things go when you look at Locked On Bucks, Locked On Pacers probably has the conversation and they say, well, yeah, we'll take the first round pick. You can have Buddy Hield, a couple of rotation players. I think the Pacers are a team that want to be competitive this year for sure. And then you say, well, okay, give us one of your young pieces that's only played one season, and they probably say no. So it might be one of those things, and I'm curious to see how this plays out. I am also just fascinated to see what the trade market overall is. I imagine there is a bunch of contending teams that would love to have Buddy Hield. Again, for the Bucks, we've always looked at the 5th starter over the last few years, and it's been a guy that you say, look, he's the 5th guy. This is a really nice player, and Grayson Allen is a really nice 5th starter on this team that has 4 high quality all-star type guys that have been around the mark. Obviously, Brook Lopez was awesome last year. But if you get then Buddy Hield, legitimately one of the best shooters, it does change the team, even if you take a little bit of a hit at the depth position. So I'm curious to know what the listeners think. Buddy Hield, not a player that we mentioned on the podcast a couple of days ago, but maybe now in the mix. And certainly if my Twitter feed has anything to do with it, Bucks fans are at least intrigued. I think, Camille, there is just in general a real desire for some action, for some trade action with this Bucks team. People seem like they're not necessarily satisfied with where the Bucks are at. I think the team's great. I've said that, but it just feels like everyone is anticipating at some point something's going to happen. And I don't know whether that's heightened because of the Giannis conversation. I'm not sure.
I'm sure the Giannis conversation made those thoughts and desires a little bit more heightened for some people, where maybe if before they were like, well, this offseason was okay. We re-signed some of our guys. We didn't get too many new pieces here, but like, it's okay. And then they hear Giannis saying like, I need this front office to continue to show me they want to win and do something. So I could see some fans being like, I take back what I said, not as good. Like, I would love to see new action. And I mean, on top of that too, when you're consistently seeing the same guys, the idea of what could be with something else is always going to sound appealing, because the thought of the unknown, it can be great. And people normally go for that great piece. They don't think about what happens if it doesn't work out. So like, I understand fans who are on the edge of their seats. Like, we need to do something. We need to do something now. But at the same token, like you said, I think we have a good team. We have a team that should be able to compete for a championship. Of course, if there's moves we can make on the margins or to rotational pieces to get another piece back, and it improves the team dynamic and the team itself, then absolutely, we got to do things to improve the team. Like when we traded for Jrue Holiday, it was kind of like, wow, we gave up a whole lot to get this. But my thought wasn't, oh, all these pick swaps and all these draft picks. My thought was, oh my God, we got Jrue Holiday. Like, let's go. Like, let's do this. Like, let's make something happen with it. So I get it for sure. And I'm not knocking anybody who feels the Bucks need to do something, because I get it. I do want to say though, if you do think the Bucks need to do something because they're not, a championship level team, that's where I would disagree. Like, I think that they are still a contending team as currently constructed. And you talked about it with Justin, I heard in the Chris Middleton pod, where it's like health is important. So, we got to see how the season unfolds, but if healthy, I like their chances.
Yeah, wouldn't be without risk with whatever they do with this asset. And as you pointed to, it's not like the Jrue Holiday trade was without risk, but they won a title straight away. You say, okay, I'm forever going to be satisfied with this, and probably would have been regardless. I think it was a move they had to make. So we'll see how this plays out. It's been a big week talking trades on Locked On Bucks. So if you missed the wider trade discussion with Frank, go back and check that out. Heaps of names mentioned on that podcast yesterday. I podcasted with Locked On Knicks. We spoke about Giannis a lot. Emmanuel quickly. Go check that one out. So a pretty fun week on the show. As far as Camille goes, on Monday, check out Carry the G. On Tuesday, check out the Tech Foul podcast. And then Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, Camille will be back here with me as well, because we are only about 2 weeks away from the preseason starting. So we'll have post-game pods coming up here real soon as well. So there's lots of content to come on Locked On Bucks. We appreciate the support for Camille and myself. This is a nice way to wrap up the week. Enjoy the weekend. We'll see you on Monday.